Hi everyone, and welcome to this video on Mentor's Guide to the lectures that we teach at the Weekend Bootcamp. This will give you a good idea about the source of material that we present to students and can really help you kickstart your mentoring so that when you sit down with them in the afternoon, you know exactly what has been taught in the morning and you can help them with their pitch deck. Firstly, I'll give you a quick guide as to what we do throughout the weekend. If you look here, you'll see that normally the kids arrive around 8 o'clock, and by about 8:30, they're going to they're going to attend a lecture on how to write a pitch deck. What is interesting about this is the way we structure it is every single lecture relates to slides of the pitch deck to complete, except for this first one. So this is a much more generic talking about structure, how a pitch deck is structured. The second one is a very long session. It's actually 2 hours long, and this really goes into business model strategy. So how to choose the right idea, how to make a business scalable, talking about total addressable market. This really is, I think, one of the most important lectures of the whole weekend. And as you can see here on the right, it goes through the following slides. So after this lecture, they should be able to produce these 5 slides on their own based on the lecture materials. After that, there's a quick lunch break, and then we move out into the breakout session. So you can see again that these slides relate to the slides up here. In terms of the next day, it's a very similar process. They arrive at 8 o'clock, 8:30. We see the first lecture on financial modeling with the subject here, and that will get them to produce one slide, which is called the ask. And we'll go through all this in a second. And then we have marketing. This is really focused on the competition go-to-market strategy and their management slide. And then we have the presentation skills workshop, which is a bit more generic, that talks about how to actually make a presentation. Back into the breakout, they finish their slides, and then at the end, usually for that last hour between 3 and 4, we'll be having pitch practice, and then presentations between 4 and 5 p.m. Whilst the judges are deliberating, so there's no dead silence, we actually will be having a presentation from an entrepreneur, fireside chat, which enables the kids to relax and listen to the entrepreneur whilst the judges are going off to add up all of the all of the different points, and then finally there's an award ceremony. So we're going to whiz through pretty quickly these slides. These slides are available to all the mentors. I will send a link out for them. Firstly, what are we focusing on throughout the entire weekend? We actually talk about a fictitious company called Choco Now, and as we build up the pitch deck, we build up the various slides of this fictitious company. So, what is Choco Now? Choco Now is chocolate on demand. This is their tagline. The very, very short pitch for what describes what the product actually is. And then on the next slide, you see the typical Choco Now delivers chocolate on demand, when you want it, wherever you want it, at the lowest cost. And this is a slide we'll actually be asking them to create to describe the product and why it's better than the existing solution. So firstly, the problem, we talk about what the problem is with chocolate today. We talk about our solution. There is going to be an optional lecture, which they can choose to do on actually creating a wireframe but some people will choose not to. So they can show the solution here and on the product page, or they can choose not to. And then we go through the business model. So we encourage all of the startups to think about how they're going to make money. This isn't just about burning money and acquiring a ton of users. Tell me how I'm going to make money. And this is actually as a mentor, part of the what are the complexities of being a mentor is explaining to them what types of different business models are there, because we simply can't go through all of them in the lecture series. We go through some of the main ones. So there could be some very creative ways they can make money that we haven't taught. So this could take quite a while for you to go through and figure out what is the right model, or will there be a couple of models you'll be deliberating on. Then we go through the product itself, and you can see the different ways in which we're going to be delivering chocolate. And then we go through the addressable market. We'll go through that in some slides later on, but we do go through concepts such as TAM, SAM, and SOM. And here's our competition cross, where we've encouraged them to do a lot of research, both on the internet and also calling companies, to figure out what the competition is exactly like. Here we'll have our go-to-market strategy, which Jordana's actually got a slide for this, which we'll talk about in a second. And then we can talk about the management team. Obviously, they may not have relevant experience in the actual sector itself, but encourage them to give attributes about themselves that should be good. Whether they're very good with numbers, whether they're very creative, or whatever. And then we always have a slide on the ask. Now, whilst we do encourage them to have what we call an ask, it is important that we explain to them they don't need to necessarily take money. We just want them to understand how you come to a startup valuation, and then they can ask for money but not necessarily take it. But it's important that there is something that they leave the audience with. Sometimes if they really don't want money, the other thing we encourage them to do is then to ask for resources or help in another way. But they need to have something in this slide that's called the ask, and then we repeat the first slide. We encourage them to put all of the details like financials and any other kind of work they've done in the appendix afterwards. This is especially useful for answering questions during the pitch. So moving on to what is a pitch deck. We talk about the pitch deck as a new form of a business plan. It's a very standardized format, and this is what they're going to be aiming to complete by the end of the weekend. And what we've done is we've taken 9 slides out of a standard kind of 12 to 15 page pitch deck, and these are the slides they're ultimately going to be filling in. So why do you need a pitch deck? Obviously, is to help yourself, your employees, to get a vision of what the business is going to do. In this weekend, remember, we don't create the actual business. We happy to help people do that afterwards. But here it's a process of thinking about the ideation side and creating the pitch deck. So, we tell them about how it should be really good to tell a story. The best pitches, as we'll see, are always very personal. And a lot of these ideas, the best ideas that we see from the kids, are very personal. So tell us a story about why it's personal to you. Be visual. We do encourage the use of lots of pictures, and actually be surprised that a lot of them are very natural to this. It's actually very unnatural to older people, but they're very naturally very visual. In their pitch, it's very important for them to be excited and upbeat. In the presentations section, we will be talking a lot about that, but when they're doing the pitch practice, definitely encourage them to get out of their shell. It will be very unusual for them to be as upbeat as we want them to be. Be brief, obviously, be simple, especially when it comes to a technical idea that can really get bogged down in the detail. Encourage them to be very simple in the pitch deck. The business needs to be something that their grandma understands. And then we have a number of, we have the YFS pitch deck template. We also have examples of other startups that went through the YFS program and their pitch decks, which are very good. And then what we'll do is we'll go through some very famous pitch decks, explain why they're good or bad. Again, you have these links in your inbox, along with some videos of some really, really good pitches and some bad pitches. Okay, so moving on to the business model slide. So this is, as you said, the longest lecture. This is almost 2 hours long, but this is all about them figuring out what their business model is and how to research the validity of their idea. So obviously, what exactly is a business? We do tell them time and time again during the lectures that it's all about hard work. This is not something that comes easily. That actually what they're about to do here on the weekend is the easiest bit. The pitch deck and the coming up with the idea. Is execution that is hard. And so we do talk about why they want to start a business, and really relate it back to passion again and again and again. Follow something that you want to do for the next 10 years. Don't do something just to make money. What is a good idea? A lot of that's a very common question we get from students. Whilst you and I may have tons of ideas, they often don't know what is a good idea. So we try and break it down into these three categories. What's going to make your life easier? What is next in the world? And what are we missing? And in this slide, we really try and explain to them why competitors aren't a bad thing. As you know, Facebook was the 13th social media application on the web at the time. Google was the 10th search engine. It's not a bad thing, but this rule of 10 and 3 is it has to be 10 times better, 3 times cheaper. That is why solutions like Uber and Facebook took off, because they were so much better than the existing solution. So even if they do have an idea that mimics a current idea, if it is 10 times better, 3 times cheaper, then that's great. If it's not, encourage them to think of something else. One of the things you do get with students is feature businesses, where wouldn't it be great if Google had this certain feature? Wouldn't it be great if Uber, as I said before in the previous video, wouldn't it be great if Uber had pink cars, not black cars? Like it's not a business, it's a feature. So encourage them to not come up with feature style businesses. This goes back to what we talked about, where we encourage the kids to build something they need. This is really about them scratching their own itch and doing it for things that perhaps don't even scale that well initially. Getting those first 5, 10, 100 users is hand-to-hand combat. We want to explain to them that it's not just about buying Facebook adverts and putting something online. This is, it's hard work. We then explain the different types of business models and how what type of business they want to create. We really want to encourage them to build a B2C business model, right? So whilst we talk about all this, we really want to encourage them to B2C, because the odds of them being able to understand what enterprise wants, or what a C2B business is capable of being, is very, very, very hard. So either a C2C business or a B2C business, anything that's 2C is something they're much, much more likely to grasp, and it's more scalable, and we're likely to have mentors in the program that can help you. So then we go through some examples of online businesses or app-based businesses. Uber obviously answered the question of what would make your life easier. We talk about their tagline, if you remember, Chocos Now, Chocolate on Demand. And we talk about what problem they were trying to solve. So this is a hypothetical problem sheet for Uber. And then we talk about the Uber solution. Okay, so this is, again, the solution sheet for Uber. We're really trying to give them examples of other businesses, what their pitch deck in a super simplified format, not even that pretty, would look like. What is next? Snapchat, the use of the camera, the use of front-facing camera, back-facing camera was not ubiquitous. What did they do? And again, what would the tagline be if we saw Snapchat pitch deck? And what problem they were trying to solve, right? They were trying to solve the problems that social networks weren't capturing the moment, and that they'd stay on the networks forever. And then this is a solution they came up with. So solution talks about the features of the product, which we discuss here. And Alibaba Group, like, what are we missing here? So what we said Alibaba was missing is, the ability for anyone in China to start a business online and distribute their product to anyone in China. Connecting buyers and sellers everywhere. And what is their problem? The problem that they were trying to solve was it's too hard to start a business. They don't have access to the entire market, and there's no trust on the internet. So they're trying to solve all those issues. And what their solution was, what they came up with, what were the features on the site, what are the features that solved the problems, right? So again, we're going from here's the problem and here's a solution to those exact problems. We do encourage them to, ask the customer, use customer surveys. And you'll see that we'll try and encourage them to either, put things on social messaging, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever. And also on the Saturday night when they go away, do send out surveys to lots and lots of friends to ask them about their business idea and whether it's good or not. And they can come back with that real data. Data-driven insights is something we do talk about a lot in Young Founders. And then I go through and introduce Choco Now. One thing we do talk about here is, in terms of market size, is how do you figure out what is an addressable market? So remember, a TAM, a SAM, and then SOM. SOM is what they're going to realistically be able to reach today. And then we go through an example of how do you look at TAM, SAM, and SOM for Choco Now, right? And we see that Choco Now SOM is all the people in Hong Kong Island that eat chocolate and are aged between 18 and 36. And we go through a live demonstration on Google about how they can find out how much chocolate people eat in Hong Kong, right? So we Google chocolate eaten per person, we download that PDF file, and we see that this is how much chocolate they're consuming, and then we see this is from this report. We do tell them to source where they get the information from. And you can see here a very complex table that basically tells you that people in China, go back to the shot here, people in Hong Kong, China do not eat a lot of chocolate compared to everybody else. So immediately you have a business model here, you have something that could work. You have to figure out why people don't consume. And the conclusion that we say is actually chocolate sales are expected to boom, distribution is a problem, and that's what we're looking to solve with Choco Now. This is going to be a key thing. One of the problems that students tend to have is when they have a business idea, it's very, very grand. We encourage them to be the small fish, solve and dominate a particular market, avoid feature creep, especially when they're just kind of talking about the business idea, get them to really, really focus on what the business is and get them to solve that problem first. Remember, dominate a small market. Then we talk a little bit about some early days of other companies. Obviously, Amazon, very focused on selling books, and now they sell everything. Google, very focused on search, doing it really well, and now they obviously do a whole bunch of stuff. And then when we show them a Peter Thiel video on dominating a small market. We again go back to this issue of trying to do too much and not pivot your business quickly enough. So we talk about why most startups fail is because there's no market need or they run out of cash. We talk about what is a minimum viable product. We try to explain what MVP is in a very simple way. And then we talk about effectively the lean startup methodology, about how you have a hypothesis, ask a question, validate that question, and then keep pivoting until you find product market fit and then scale. We talk about what some of the more creative things that people did to form an MVP. And we talk about different ways of monetizing their online services, right? So free can pay for advertising, such as Google. Freemium, here we have an example of Farmville. And then we talk about how freemium is actually not a bad thing because, 90% of the revenue from free games in the App Store, 90% revenue in the App Store comes from free games. So don't think it's a bad thing. Equally, another example of a freemium is Spotify. And again, we point out how the landing page here is really interesting, how they immediately makes you want to choose the premium version because it's highlighted, it's colored, it looks much nicer than the others. And then even if it's paid, we always give a trial. You can do things on subscription like Dollar Shave Club. You can do per use, which is iTunes model, or on a time basis, such as Coursera. You have a certain amount of time to complete the course. Where they acquire the goods from, again, if there's a physical good company, they can manufacture, wholesale, or drop ship. We do discuss how this is a very expensive thing to do and what the pros and cons are of manufacturing, wholesale, and drop shipping. Each of these choices, again, please feel free to have a look at this. And we see how in the Choco Now example, we're going to charge a markup on all chocolates and then have a subscription package as well, where you can have chocolate delivered to your door in order to have that recurring revenue. Okay, so on marketing, This is on day 2, so this is the second lecture of day 2. Pardon me, I'm actually going to go on the first lecture of day 2, which is the financials. Okay, so on the financial side, what you're going to learn, or the students are going to learn, is about where different funding sources are, and eventually going to produce the ask sheet. So we tell them that they may have an idea in a team, but they need the money. We talk about different sources of funding. Obviously, earning is the best way. They never think of this, by the way. They never think of actually earning the money. They always want to borrow it or get an investor. And the best businesses do not need funding. This is something we keep drilling into them, and how businesses basically raise no money and they're the best businesses in the world. It's very easy to try and just raise money and build a business. And once again, we talk about the value of ideas, which is 0. It's all about execution. And do some multiplication. And then we go into some of the financials and talk about revenue. How do we estimate revenue? And then what are the different types of costs? What are the different things that go into variable costs, and how they can then calculate it? I'll give them the gross profit. And we then go into, the various types of fixed costs and how they should try and minimize them, right? So one is office costs, work from home, or coffee shops, and labor costs. It's amazing how many of the kids want to pay themselves millions of dollars for a salary. This should be obviously 0. This is a quick thing we make them do on office space, is actually go and look at the different differences in the cost of office space. And again, it's an eye-opening experience. So we tell them to go look at the cost of offices in IFC or some big office space versus co-working space versus their own apartment. And we want them to actually come up with these different values to really give them a sense of how much it's going to cost to launch this business. And again, on labor, do it yourself. Don't just go out on a hiring spree, getting them to go on Google and search around what the actual cost of a CTO or CMO is. If they don't have those skills, they're always shocked at how much these things cost and how it quickly adds up. On marketing, we, as a rule of thumb, want to restrict them to a percentage of their revenue. Don't let them just go marketing crazy, but also make sure they understand what the ROI of marketing actually is, like how they need to measure the value of their marketing dollars very, very carefully to see if it's actually being spent wisely. What we've done actually is we've given them a spreadsheet, which is an example P&L, where they just stick in numbers into the orange columns, orange cells, and actually spits out various numbers. All they need to do really is type in the price of the goods sold, number of customers, how often they're buying per year, do the work on the CMO and CTO from a labor perspective, and do work on the costs of the various co-working spaces, and the spreadsheet calculates all of the rest of the costs for them. This is a sheet on how to obtain customers, and we again go through how it's much harder to get free customers than it is paid, and what the benefits of each one are. Talking of marketing costs, we go through customer acquisition cost, what is a CAC, how do you calculate it from your P&L, what is lifetime value, what is Choco Now's lifetime value, and how imbalanced models are those where the CAC is obviously much higher than the LTV, and this is much better. The LTV, we give them as a rule of thumb that it should be about 3 times CAC. I know this varies for various companies, but we need to give a lot of rule of thumbs here. And the CAC should be retrieved within 1 year. So we do try and restrict the businesses to marketing spend to only be 20% of revenue. So it doesn't go out of control, but it can be less, it can be a bit more if they can justify it. And then we go through this, an example P&L of Choco Now. As you can see, they're buying more and more each year, and the price of our goods are going up each year, and as are the number of our customers, and the cost of buying each item is generally quite steady. And this gives us the fact that Choco Now makes loss first year, break even second year, and then actually makes money in 2018. In terms of valuation, we go through and tell them about when they're raising money, what exactly equity means, what types of investors should approach at different stages. and how you calculate the valuation. At YFS, we teach the step-up valuation method, which you may or may not have seen. It's just a simple way of valuing a company rather than trying to get the kids to do a DCF or anything too complicated. The step-up valuation basically adds $100,000 into your valuation for each of the categories that you can tick here. It's a long list, but effectively it's how much of a moat do you have, how much experience do you have, are you committed full time? And every time you tick a yes, it makes the company more valuable. That will then basically give them a valuation. Now, obviously, there's pros and cons to this, but it typically gives you a valuation for most of the students in the kind of $200,000 to $300,000 range, which sounds about right for basically an idea on a piece of paper. And then we go through what is pre and post money valuation. And we go through the example on Choco Now, how I tick this for myself, and lo and behold, my pre-money valuation was $200,000, and then how that translates into the ask itself, right? So we're raising $40,000 at a pre-money valuation of $3,000. That $40,000 has come from my estimate of how much it's going to cost me to start this business. Is my completed financials. So we ask them to go away, figure out what they need, and then fill in the slide called the ask, figure out research cost of office space, the cost of hiring, fill in the financial model, and fill in the separate valuation model. And finally, we have the marketing strategy slides. We talk about bad products and how no matter how much money you spend on marketing, you really never going to gain an audience with a bad product. We talk about how even companies as successful as Google have had products that have died that were not a success. And even some of these things were really good, but that alone is not enough to succeed. We do need to build a marketing strategy, and then we talk about how Dollar Shave Club, going back to that company, became bigger than Gillette and Social and were eventually bought out. And then we go through these following 5 points about really creating a go-to-market strategy. At the end of this, you're going to see them create the elevator pitch for the business, which is the company purpose, and then they're going to create the go-to-market strategy. So here we discuss a little bit about how they go about marketing the product, defining your business and how it creates value. We talk about business model canvas, then for Google, and then we talk about customer personas and empathy mapping to try and really get them to target who that customer is, what do they look like, and how do they behave. This is an example from HubSpot, and we talk about customer empathy maps, which are right here. How do they think, feel, hear, see, say, and do? Here we have that same thing in other boxes. And then we discuss competition. So how do people perceive the following companies? You create your customer cross. And then we list out all the main competitors and eventually put them on our customer cross. We discuss competitive analysis and Porter's 5 forces and what is the value proposition of the business. And we look at some examples such as Square. Here we can see they tell you what the value proposition is very clearly. Same with Opera. And then we discuss what the elevator pitch is. And this is quite key, where you say, okay, I'm going to have a product that is for this target customer who has a certain customer need. What is my product name? It's a market category that has one key benefit that's unlike its competition, and that is a truly unique product. And we go through exactly what Choco Now's elevator pitch will be, and we then teach them how to create their team page. We now go through go-to-market strategy, where we obviously talk about the customer journey. We discuss how the difference between digital and physical touch points, the objective first framework where we set objective defined KPIs. Remember to set the objective first before you go out and try and figure out what the company does. And here we see we have some objectives for the business Choco now, where we actually want to gain X number of users to drive a certain number of sales, and the KPIs are downloads, active users, and sales. Here's our go-to-market strategy again. This is our tactics for gaining these customers, beta programs, social media, and how we're going to execute this. So we then talk about how we're actually going to go out doing that exact process to get the company off the ground. And as we come to the end of the lesson, we talk about what they've learned and go through some Q&A and a quick thank you. So that is it. Those are the main lectures. There is one lecture after this that's just a lot more interactive, just about what constitutes a great pitch deck and how to give a presentation, which we don't need to go through. Any questions on this, please do let us know. I've gone through pretty quickly, but you can feel free to look through the slides. Most of them have annotations on there for the presenters, but please do shoot us a message on the WhatsApp group or an email if you have any questions about this, and thanks for listening.